If Moses had been a brewer, these would have been the commandments he'd have carved into stone tablets. I'm Hendo from the Rockstar Brew Academy, and today, after helping thousands of professional brewers worldwide, I've distilled the essence of brewing excellence into these non-negotiable rules. So whether you're a pro brewer, aspiring to be one, or you're a home brewer looking to level up your game, break these rules at your own peril. Let's get brewing. So commandment number 1 is, thou shalt brew with purpose. Picture this scenario. You're standing in your brew house at 5 a.m, coffee in hand, steam rising from the mash tun, but there's the million-dollar question that separates the Rockstar brewers from the rest. What does success look like for this batch? Most brewers can't answer that, or at the very least, they think that the job is done after the knockout has been completed. And if that's you, you're just winging it, hoping muscle memory and good intentions will carry you through. But hope isn't a strategy. Rockstar brewers know exactly what great looks like before they even fire up the boiler. They've defined their target original gravity, and not just at 1048, at 1048 plus or minus 1 SG. They know their expected final gravity, their IBU target, the carbonation level, the colour specification, and the clarity expectations. I worked with a brewery in Texas who dialed in their consistency just by implementing this one principle. They stopped guessing and started defining success up front. Every step has a purpose. Every measurement had a meaning. Your recipe isn't just the ingredients, it's a roadmap to a specific destination. Know where you're going before you start the journey and have a clear vision on how to get there. Which brings us perfectly to the next commandment. Thou shalt not worship recipes alone. Here's the hard truth that'll ruffle some feathers. Beersmith, brewfather, or brewer's friend are not your saviour. I've seen brewers clutch their grain bills and hop combos like sacred scrolls, convinced that the perfect ratio of Munich to Vienna malt or Citra to Mosaic hops will solve all their problems. But here's what they're missing. Consistency lives in your system, not your ingredients. Process is king. Think about it. You can have the exact same recipe and get wildly different results based on your mash temperature control, your sparge technique, your fermentation management. I've seen identical recipes produce completely different beers because one brewery had their process dialed in and the other was flying by the seat of their pants. You can give the same recipe to 7 different brewers and wind up with 7 different beers. A brewery in Melbourne taught me this lesson the hard way. They had this award-winning IPA recipe, perfect on paper, and occasionally they'd make an absolute banger batch, but their consistency was all over the map. Turns out they were just making random recipe changes thinking that this would fix their quality issues. This just caused inconsistency from batch to batch, each yielding a different beer every time. Imagine being a consumer of this brand. Would you trust this brand and buy their beer when you didn't know what you were going to get in the first place? Your recipe gives you the ingredients, your process gives you the beer. Master your process first, then worry about tweaking that hop schedule later. Hey, if you're enjoying seeing the value in these commandments, hit that like button wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast. It tells that platform to share this with more brewers who need to hear this message. Now, here's where most brewers mess up completely. The next commandment. Thou shalt question all brewing advice, and yes, even mine. The internet is full of brewing experts. Forums, Facebook groups, Reddit threads. Everyone's got an opinion about your beer and your brewing. But here's the filter you need to apply to every piece of advice you receive. Has this person actually brewed and sold beer professionally? Not home brewed, not just theoretical knowledge. Have they stood in a commercial brew house, dealt with real customers, faced real consequences when a batch goes wrong? I see this constantly. Pro brewers heading to home brewer forums looking for advice. It's like getting driving lessons from someone who's only ever played racing video games. The fundamentals might be similar, but the real world application is completely different. And when it comes to the pro brewer forums, while there's loads of chest thumping out there, remember this one thing. There's no right or wrong way to do something in your brewery. There's your way. Question everything. Verify credentials. Ask for specific examples. The person giving you advice should have skin in the game, not just opinions on the internet. And if they haven't dealt with angry customers, failed food safety inspections, OSHA, or the other financial pressures of things like dumping a bad batch of beer, take their advice with a grain of salt, or better still, a grain of malt. Take all the options in and do what's best for you and what matches your brewery's capabilities. The next commandment is absolutely critical. Thou shalt measure, record, and improve. You cannot fix what you don't measure. Period. End of discussion. I walk into breweries all the time where the brewer tells me, yeah, our beer is pretty consistent, and then I ask to see their brew logs and batch notes, and it's either blank pages or numbers scribbled on the back of grain invoices. Every single parameter matters. Mash temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen levels, fermentation temperature, pressure readings, timing. If you're not tracking it, you're not controlling it. Here's a real-world example. I worked with a brewery in Croatia that was getting inconsistent attenuation in their flagship pale ale. Sometimes it was 78%, sometimes it was 85%. They couldn't figure out why. When we started actually measuring and recording the liquor to grist ratios, for example, we discovered that their levels were swinging from 3-1 to 4.5-1 from batch to batch. Once they standardized their mashing process and started hitting their target liquor to grist ratio consistently, their attenuation became a rock solid 82% every single time. Your brewing log isn't paperwork, it's not a chore that needs to be done, it's your roadmap to better beer. Every number tells a story. Here's where most breweries completely lose the plot. It's the next commandment. Thou shalt define beer quality clearly. Quality is not a vibe, it's not a feeling, it's not, oh, I'll know the beer's good when I taste it. Quality is fit for use and true to brand. And if you can't write those things down, you can't achieve them consistently. I see brewers all the time who say their beer is high quality but can't tell me what that actually means. What's your acceptable IBU range? What's your colour tolerance? What's your acceptable carbonation level? What does good haze look like? Further to that, what's the beer supposed to look like, smell like, taste like, and feel like? Have you written it down in words? And it's not a tasting note for the marketing department. I worked with a brewery in Victoria that was struggling with customer complaints about their lager. They kept saying it was good quality, but they'd never defined what that actually meant. When we sat down and actually wrote out a product specification, specific gravity ranges, flavour targets, clarity standards, we discovered that this brewery was only hitting targets about 60% of the time. Once they defined quality clearly, they wrote it down, they set targets, they set tolerances, they trained the team to aim for every target. Their consistency jumped to over 95% and the customer complaints all but vanished. Your quality standards should be so clear that any brewer on your team can just read them and know exactly what success looks like. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. Hey, comment crash course below and I'll send you the link to my recently updated and free crash course called the Pro Brewer Quality Plan. The next commandment is where ego meets reality. Thou shalt brew for the drinkers, not for what you want to brew. This is the hardest pill for most brewers to swallow, particularly those that are in planning or startup mode. You fell in love with brewing because of that perfect Belgian quad or that hop-forward double IPA. But here's the brutal truth. Your personal taste does not pay the bills. I work with a brewery in Queensland whose head brewer was obsessed with sour beers. They were beautiful, complex, and award-winning sours. Sounds like fun, right? But here's the problem. His market didn't want that. They wanted clean lagers and approachable IPAs, and his sales figures reflected that. He wasn't growing. He was brewing for himself, not for his customers. Sales were tanking. The tap room was empty. He kept insisting people just didn't understand his vision. Meanwhile, the brewery just down the street was crushing it with simple, well-executed crowd pleasers. The turning point came when we looked at all the data. His sours represented 60% of his production volume, but only 15% of his sales. His reluctantly brewed pale ale, it sold out every single batch, within days. We shifted the production mix. More pale ales, more lagers, approachable IPAs, and the odd hazy. Less experimental sours, and within 6 months, revenue was up 40% and the tap room was packed every weekend. Here's what this looks like in practice. Survey your customers, track your sales data religiously, pay attention to what kegs kick first and what sits in the cool room for ages. Your gut might say Imperial Stout, but your sales data might just scream Session IPA. The best brewers I know have learned to find joy in brewing what people actually want to drink, and believe me, it's a massive challenge to brew a clean, crisp lager. There's just nowhere to hide. Those brewers save their personal passion projects for small batches and special releases, and they still enjoy them. Remember, you're not brewing for others or for competitions, you're brewing for the person who just finished a 12-hour shift and just want a beer that tastes like relief. Brew for them, and you'll keep your lights on, and those customers will keep coming back every single time. Here's where amateur brewers reveal themselves, the next commandment. Thou shalt not covet brew day. Everybody loves brew day. The steam, the aromas, the hands-on action. It feels like real brewing. But here's the hard truth. The brewing part of beer is only a small part of the actual brewing process. And over time, if I'm completely honest with you, it gets pretty boring, repetitive, and uninspiring when you do it day after day after day. Fermentation management, carbonation control, dissolved oxygen monitoring, hitting the numbers. This is where the legends are made and where the mediocre brewers fall apart. A brewery in South Australia that I was working with was obsessing over their mash schedule, spending hours perfecting their mash program. Meanwhile, their carbonation was inconsistent and their DO levels were through the roof. They were making beautiful wort, but terrible beer. The sexy part of the brewing process happens in the brew house, but the profitable part of the brewing process happens in the fermentation and everything afterwards. Master your post-boil processes, your cold side, and watch your beer quality skyrocket. Your customers don't taste your mash efficiency, they taste your fermentation control. This next commandment hits close to home for a lot of brewers. Thou shalt not chase shiny stainless steel. More equipment is not going to fix bad systems. I've walked into breweries with $1 million setups producing terribly inconsistent beer, and I've seen operations with Frankenstein equipment making world-class products. The difference? One focused on process, the other focused on the toys. A brewery I worked with in Norway spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a new automated brew house while their shelf life and flavour stability was measured in just days. They had the shiniest brew house in the country and they were still dumping batches due to dissolved oxygen, and they refused to spend just $25,000 on a DO meter. Meanwhile, a brewery I worked at in Geelong with equipment held together with hope and duct tape was winning awards because we'd mastered the fundamentals and we invested in a reliable low-range DO meter. Master your process first. Understand your system inside and out, then, and only then, upgrade your equipment to support your proven processes. Great beer comes from great systems, not great equipment. The equipment just makes the great systems easier to execute. We're about to hit the final two commandments. These are the ones that separate the mediocre brewers from the Rockstar brewers. The next commandment is the mindset that changes everything. Thou shalt always improve, even if it's just 1%. Our mantra at the Rockstar Brewer Academy is simple. My next batch will be my best. Not perfect, better. Small gains, big results. Most brewers think improvement means dramatic changes. Updating your recipe, new processes, complete overhauls. But Rockstar brewers know that it's those little 1% improvements that compound into massive gains over time. Think about your favourite breweries whose beers you absolutely love. Say their name aloud right now. They didn't wake up one morning and start making world-class beer. They made incremental improvements day after day, and I bet they continue to do so. You and your brewery need to do the same. And if you do, your brewery will make beer as good as them, if not better. The Japanese call it kaizen, continuous improvement. In brewing, it's the difference between stagnation and excellence. Every batch you brew is an opportunity to get better. Every mistake is data for improvement. Never settle for good enough when slightly better is within your reach. And the commandment that separates the lifers from the weekend warriors, thou shalt never stop learning. The moment you think you know everything about brewing is the moment your beer starts going backwards. This industry evolves daily. New techniques, new science, new understanding of old processes. I've been brewing professionally for over 15 years and I still learn something new every single week. Last month, my good mate Alex and I discovered a phenomenon in wheat beer that explains why many Hefeweizens lack esters and taste too sour for style despite hitting all the correct pH numbers. The month before, a brewery in New Zealand taught me a CIP optimization that saved them 30% on their chemical costs. But here's the key. Learn from the right resources. Not every brewing blog or YouTube channel, including this one, is created equal. Seek out the brewers who are actually doing the work, facing the same challenges you face, solving real problems in real breweries. A brewery in Michigan told me they'd been following the same processes for 5 years because that's the way we've always done it. And I'm sure you've seen that lots of times yourself. Meanwhile, their competitors were implementing new techniques, improving efficiency, reducing costs, and making better beer, and competing harder on price because it was cheaper for them to produce. And when they finally committed to continuous learning, attending conferences, connecting with other professionals, staying current with brewing science, and joining the Rockstar Brewer Academy community, their operation transformed. Better beer, lower cost, happier customers. The brewing industry rewards the curious. Stay hungry for knowledge, question your assumptions, test new ideas, connect with other professionals. Your education didn't end when you started brewing professionally, it just began. The best brewers are students for life, and the day I stop learning is the day I die. These aren't just rules, they're the foundation of every successful brewery I've worked with across 27 different countries so far. The difference between good brewers and rockstar brewers isn't talent, it's just following these principles religiously. If you want to dive deeper into any of these commandments, comment crash course below and I'll send you a link where you can see real results. And remember, your next batch will be your best batch. Now get out there and brew like the rockstar you are. Hey, if you like this episode, I reckon you should watch this one next. Thanks heaps for watching this episode of Quality-Focused Pro Brewers, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.